We have got another massive patch on the way as 14.5 features a ton of champion buffs and nerfs along with many item adjustments. Welcome back everyone to another tier list update. My name is Sean and I'm going to be your host for this one while Dan is away on vacation. So with the help of our challenger players and analyzing the most recent data, let's get you guys set up with everything you need to know for patch 14.5. Also, we are excited to announce we've done a massive update, adding all brand new courses for Season 14 on our website, SkillCapped.com. And if that's not enough, we upload 10 brand new Smurf commentaries every week where a challenger teaches you how to play every champion in the exact rank you're stuck in. The best part is you can try all this out completely risk-free. And if you don't rank up while actively using SkillCapped, you get your money back. No questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank that you've always wanted in Season 14. So we're going to start this one off by covering all of the item changes and discussing which champions are going to be affected by them the most. Enchanter supports have been on the back burner for Season 14, so Riot's buffing up Dreammaker. The shield values going from 140 flat to 75, scaling to 255. Damage has changed as well, going from 90 flat to 50, scaling to 170. Milio, Yuumi, Lulu, Soraka, Nami, and Sona are a few champions who are going to be liking these changes the most. Another one of the weaker support item upgrades is being buffed for this patch, with Celestial Opposition next up. Cooldown is being reduced from 20 to 18 seconds. The slow is buffed as well, going from 50 to 60%, and slow duration is up from 1.5 to 2 seconds. Melee supports like Blitzcrank, Nautilus, Thresh, Leona, and Alistar have been running Celestial the most in recent patches, so they should all see a nice uptick in power for 14.5. Now there is one support upgrade that's being nerfed for 14.5, and it's Solstice Slay. Cooldown's being increased from 20 to 30 seconds. Bonus health is up from 7% max health to 50, scaling to 230. Decaying movement speed is also being reduced from 30 to 25%. Supports like Maokai, Braum, and Rakan have been running Solstice the most in recent patches, so they're going to be hit the hardest by these nerfs. So we've got a few tank items that are going to be buffed for this patch, with Heartsteel up first. The passive base damage is being changed from 100 flat to 80, but the item health scaling is going up from 10 to 12%. Riot has these changes listed as buffs, so we can assume the health scaling change is going to outweigh the flat damage nerf. Mundo, Tahm Kench, Cho'Gath, and Sion are the champions who are going to benefit from this buff the most. Sunfire is the other tank item that's going to be buffed, as Riot's increasing the health on the item from 450 to 500. Immolate damage is up as well from 12 to 15. Now there's a ton of tanks who like to run Sunfire, so this is just a general buff to tanks across the board. After removing a bunch of power from Rocket Belt a few patches ago, Riot's circling back around to issue some buffs for 14.5. Cost of the item is being increased by 100 gold, however the AP on the item is up by 10. Since 10 AP is worth 200 gold, this is a net buff to Rocket Belt. Neeko, Kennen, Fiddle, and Echo have been the biggest Rocket Belt users in recent patches, so they're going to gain a bit of strength back for 14.5. Now it wasn't just Rocket Belt that Riot over-nerfed a couple patches ago, as Storm Surge has been pretty weak for a while now. Riot's given it a small buff for this patch, with the movement speed being increased from 5 to 8%. A ton of mages and assassins are going to benefit from this one, with Fizz, Vex, and Diana being the champions who purchase Storm Surge the most. So with both of these AP items being buffed, Riot's throwing in a nerf to Lichbane, reducing the Spellblade AP ratio proc from 50 to 45%. Lichbane has definitely been one of the more broken items in recent patches, but we just can't see how it falls out of meta due to a nerf like this. Expect for Lichbane to remain extremely powerful for 14.5. Frozen Heart has been the most OP tank item for Season 14, so it's being nerfed for a second time here. Cost of the item is going up from 2,400 to 2,500 gold. Armor is being reduced from 70 to 65. Lots of tanks and melee supports are going to be losing a bit of strength as a result of these nerfs. So starting it off hot up in the top lane, these Wukong buffs may very well be the most impactful changes of the patch. Max passive stacks are going down from 10 to 5, and the kicker though is that you now receive 50% more value per stack. Stacks are going to now also fall off one by one instead of all at once. So as you can see in the background gameplay here, you get the same amount of armor at max stacks. However, you now reach max stacks in half the time, which is honestly pretty wild. So you're going to be able to reach max stacks extremely fast now, which is going to significantly increase the dueling strength of Wukong in the early game. Wukong was already a bit of a stat check champion due to all of his point and click damage, but this is just going to make it really nuts. As a result of these buffs, we're going to be moving Wukong from B and into S tier for 14.5. So top lane Zac has been performing pretty well in recent patches, so Riot wants to tone it down a bit for 14.5. Passive healing is being reduced by 1% max health. W base damage is actually being increased though by 5 at all ranks. These changes probably end up slightly net negative, but we can't see them being enough to warrant a push down the tier list for Zac, so he'll continue to be placed in the S tier. A few Yorick adjustments are planned for this patch, with E-Ghoul bonus damage being lowered from 30 to 20%. Maiden Armor and Magic Resist is going up quite significantly though, from 10 scaling to 50 to 30 scaling to 90. So in theory, Lethality Yorick should lose quite a bit of strength due to these changes, while Bruiser Yorick should be liking them a bit more. We won't be shifting Yorick anywhere on the tier list for now, as he's going to remain in the A tier. If we have a look at how the top lane tier list is constructed for 14.5, we've got Urgot as the top lane OP tier champion. With nerfs to Vayne and Twisted Fate for this patch, we've pushed them down the tier list and it leaves Urgot on top. Wukong is definitely one to watch for this patch, as the buffs could honestly turn him into an OP tier champ, but for now, we're placing him in S tier and will adjust accordingly if needed for the mid-patch update. The Volibear buffs from last patch have been out for a while now and are proving to provide a lot of strength to the champ, so we're pushing him up further and into S tier for 14.5. Heartsteel users like Tahm Kench and Mundo have already been performing quite well in recent patches, so with the item buffed, they're going to be great S tier picks. Both champs can even implement Sunfire Aegis into their builds depending on the game, so technically they're double buffed for this patch. Jarvan has been one of the weaker junglers for Season 14, as he hasn't been able to fit in after the removal of Gore Drinker, so Riot has a few buffs planned for him this time around. Q cooldown is being lowered at the later ranks only, armor per level is going up from 4.8 to 5.2, and we honestly really don't see these changes being enough to significantly alter Jarvan's solo Q strength, so he's going to remain a B tier pick for now. Blue Kayn has been drastically outperforming Red Kayn in Season 14, so Red Kayn is going to receive a few buffs. There'll now be a 0.5% bonus health scaling added to Kayn's passive healing. Our healing is also being increased from 65 to 75%. For how bad Red Kayn is right now, we don't see these changes tipping the scales enough, so Kayn's going to remain in the jungle A tier. The 14.4 Rek'Sai changes ended up shipping with a ton of bugs, and the champ was heavily underperforming, so Riot has a bunch of changes lined up for 14.5. There's going to be a plethora of bug fixes and quality of life changes added. E-Max Fury damage is going up in the early game from 6 to 8% max health. E-Monster Cap is up as well early on from 60 to 75. Our base damage gets a nice boost, going up by 50 at all ranks, while the missing health damage is up by 5% at all ranks. Just from these stat buffs alone, Rek'Sai should gain a good chunk of strength back for this patch, and the bug fix changes should help a ton as well. So we're going to be giving her a bump up into the S tier. Bel'Veth has been a top-tier jungler in recent patches, so she's being hit with a nerf for 14.5. E-damage reduction is going down from 42 scaling to 70% to 35 scaling to 55%. Not necessarily a change that's going to remove Bel'Veth from meta, but enough to force her out of the OP tier and down into S. Brand has been one of the most OP junglers throughout all of Season 14, so a few nerfs are headed his way. Our damage is going down, but at the later ranks only. Our cooldown takes a hit as well, being increased by 5 seconds at rank 1, but by 15 seconds at max rank. So more so scaling nerfs to Brand, as his pre-level 11 should really not be affected all that much here. It is the later game teamfights where Brand has a couple items to where he does really thrive, so the nerfs will still hurt him, and we're going to be moving Brand into the jungle A tier. Evelynn is next up on the nerf list for jungle, as she's going to be losing some damage off of her Q, with the AP ratio being lowered from 30 to 25%. Definitely not the end of the world for Evelynn. She is being negatively influenced as well by the Lichbane nerfs, so we have to keep that in mind, but overall we can't see her dropping very much in power and is going to remain in the jungle S tier. Nidalee has been a monster high elo pick in recent patches, so Riot has a few nerfs planned for her. Movement speed is being lowered from 340 to 335. Q Cougar form bonus damage is being reduced from 40 to 30%. Nothing too major here, and we don't see these nerfs leading to a significant shift in Nidalee's solo Q strength, so she's going to continue to be placed in the jungle A tier. So, looking at the jungle tier list now, with Bel'Veth nerfed and dropping out of OP tier, that leaves Briar as the standalone #1 carry of the patch. There's even this new build going around for Briar right now, where you rush Eclipse and it's given her a ton of strength, but many players have yet to catch on to this. Our challenger jungler Skillshot actually has a brand new commentary where he showcases this build that's just been uploaded to our website, so go check that out if you haven't. Just like Volibear top lane, Jungle Volley is getting an added push up the tier list for this patch, as as he's been excelling really well due to the recent buffs. Now, even though we expect for the Wukong buffs to more heavily impact him in the top lane, jungle Wukong will gain a good amount of strength as well, and is being adjusted up in the jungle A tier. We'll have to see just how strong the dueling strength of Wukong is now in the early game with these buffs, because it could just open up some really aggro invade plays where you look to fight the enemy jungler as much as possible. And you're going to notice that we're going to be adding Zyra to the jungle tier list for this patch, as she's being placed in the B tier. There have been a ton of changes in the past little while that have significantly increased the strength of Zyra jungle, and she's actually in a pretty good spot right now. Our multi-role challenger player Hector has a new commentary for Zyra jungle on our website, so if you want to pick her up, it's a great resource to help you out there. We've had Veigar rated as one of the weakest mid laners throughout the first 4 patches of Season 14, so he's finally getting some buffs. QAP ratio is going to be increased by 5% at all ranks. Our cooldowns being reduced by 20 seconds at rank 1, but stays the same at max rank. Even though 5% AP on Q may not seem like a big deal, we do have to keep in mind that Veigar does reach higher AP thresholds than most champions due to stacking AP with Q, so it may be more impactful than most would think. Don't get us wrong though here, these buffs are nothing major and Veigar isn't going to become a priority pick, but we see the changes being enough to finally move him out of C and into B tier. So Riot is giving Vex more power against champions with dashes for this next patch, with her passive gloom damage going up from 30 scaling to 140 to 40 scaling to 150. AP ratio on gloom damage is up as well from 20 to 25%. Killing units with E is now also going to grant a passive refund. So nothing too major here for Vex. She's going to become an even better counter to melee mids with dashes, but right now the mid lane meta is being dominated by ranged picks like Karma and Ahri, so it's a bit more difficult for Vex to really fit in, and she's going to remain in the A tier for now. So it's a relatively light patch for mid lane, with just Veigar and Vex being changed, which means the tier list sees minimal movement here. It seems like right now for every single role there's just one outlier who stands above all else, and for mid lane that champion is Karma. Karma has an extremely high pick rate and win rate right now and checks off all our boxes for an OP champion, so she takes home the only OP tier spot. Karma is just so good with Malignants and has a really crazy mid-game spike when she completes Cosmic Drive, as her consistent skirmish strength becomes absolutely godlike. She's so easy to pick up as well, so even if you just want to spam her while she's in her broken state, it's not going to require a ton of time investment to start popping off. Always a more niche ADC, but especially underplayed for Season 14, has been Kog'Maw, so Riot's given him a few buffs to try and bring some attention back to the pick. Passive movement speed is being increased from 0 scaling to 40% to 10 scaling to 50%. Q cast time is being changed from 0.25 seconds to now matching Kog's auto attack timer. E slow is going up by 10% at all ranks. Our minimum AD ratio is buffed as well, going from 65 to 75%. Every change on their own is quite small. However, when added together, should result in Kog'Maw gaining at least a percent to his overall win rate. Kog has been around that 51% level as of recent, so with these buffs, we see them being enough to warrant a push up into the ADC S tier. The second ADC who's going to be buffed for 14.5 is Sivir. Riot has plans to increase Sivir's base armor from 26 to 30. Nothing too crazy here, and for now we're going to be leaving Sivir in the ADC B tier. The big 3 in the ADC role from 14.4 are all seeing nerfs for this patch, and first up is Senna. QAD ratio is being reduced, going from 50 to 40%, and considering Senna's absolutely incredible standing in 14.4, we can't see how this nerf reduces her strength enough to warrant a push down the tier list, so she's going to remain in OP ADC. Some nerfs to AD Twisted Fate are finally here, with his E being targeted in 2 separate ways. E attack speed is going down from 10 scaling to 60% to 10 scaling to 50%. EAD ratio is nerfed super hard, going from 75 to 25%. These nerfs are definitely way more harsh than the Senna changes, and we expect for Twisted Fate to lose a considerable amount of power for 14.5, so we're going to be moving him from OP into A tier. Vayne is next up on the nerf list for ADC, as she's going to be losing some power on passive and Q. Passive movement speed is being lowered from 45 to 30. Q cooldown is being increased from 4 to 6 seconds at rank 1, but it's going to remain the same when you have the spell fully maxed out. So Q change is a nerf to pre-level 9 Vayne, but from then on, you won't be affected at all. We don't see these changes being as harsh as the nerfs to Twisted Fate, so for Vayne's tier list placement, we're going to be pushing her down from OP and into S. Riot continues to chip away at Smolder as we're getting more changes for the newest champion release in patch 14.5. Q burn damage is being changed from 6.5% max health true damage to now scaling with 2% per 100 bonus AD, 1.5% per 100 AP, and 1% per 100 stacks. E number of attack is also being changed so that instead of scaling with 5% crit, it'll now scale off 2% dragon practice stacks. Our base damage is going down, however, the sweet spot multiplier is up and the heal is going up as well. As you can see in the background clip here, if you're hitting the sweet spot, damage is going to be up on R for 14.5. So all in all, it's super tough to accurately rate a new champion like this when Riot's changing them every single patch, but we do expect for Smolder to be a good pickup once again for 14.5 and is going to be placed in the ADC A tier. So if we have a glance at the complete ADC tier list, there's a considerable amount of movement for 14.5. Now this really doesn't happen very often, but for every single role we've covered so far, there's just been one OP tier champ, and that stands true again for ADC with Senna. Senna is just a cut above all else right now, and even with the nerf, we don't expect that to change. Definitely don't be sleeping on Kog'Maw for this patch though, as it's not just the direct buff that's going to help him out. Enchanter supports are actually becoming stronger for this patch due to the Dreammaker buffs, so Kog paired up with Soraka, Lulu, or Milio is going to be pretty solid now. We're going to be taking a look at the Seraphine changes in a moment when we cover support, but they'll definitely be impacting her in the carry role as well, and she's being pushed down into the A tier. Riot continues to chip away at Maokai as the nerfs from 14.4 didn't reduce his power in any significant way. For this patch, they're going to be lowering Maokai's base movement speed from 335 to 330 and also increasing his W cooldown by 1 second at all ranks. One other change that only affects jungle Maokai is to his Q monster damage, going from 80 to 120 at rank 1. Now we do have to keep in mind that Solstice Slay is also being nerfed, which is probably why Riot didn't go harder with these direct nerfs. Even with the Solstice Slay nerfs in mind though, these changes don't seem like they're going to be enough to push a 54% win rate champion out of meta. Maybe a 2 or 3% drop in win rate at most, but even then, Maokai's still going to be in the upper percentile. For the time being, we're going to be leaving Maokai in the support OP tier, but if the changes do land a bit more harsh than we expect, we're going to give you guys an update for the mid-patch tier list. It looks like we've saved the biggest changes for last, as Seraphine is receiving a plethora of adjustments in 14.5. Movement speed is up from 325 to 330. Mana growth is going down, however mana regen growth is being increased. Attack damage is being reduced by a significant amount, going from 55 to 50. Q has a bunch of changes with the mana cost lowered early on, but nerfed later. Missile speed on Q is up and damage is up by 5 at all ranks. W cooldown is being lowered, mana cost is being reduced, shield is going up, and movement speed AP ratio is nerfed. E cooldown is nerfed early but buffed later, mana cost is being lowered, damage is up, and CC duration is up early but nerfed later. With a lot of these changes to where stats are buffed early but nerfed later, it should be net positive for support Seraphine since it's a bit harder for her to reach those later levels. E minion damage is going down, and there will also be a change to Seraphine's passives where minion damage is reduced from 300 to 100% while general passive damage is lowered too. This definitely hurts the viability of bot lane Seraphine the most, as you're more reliant on having that wave clear. Last changes are to Seraphine's R, with the cooldown of the spell being increased but at the later ranks only. RAP ratio takes a hit, going from 60 to 40%. So overall, these changes should be net positive for support Seraphine, but there's just so many of them that it's hard to say exactly how much power she will gain off the back of them. We're going to be leaving Seraphine in the support B tier for now, but if the changes do end up more impactful, we're going to be moving her up further for the mid-patch update. So, we've just got a few changes to the support tier list for 14.5, and they're mainly due to indirect adjustments. The Dreammaker changes should bring some nice strength back to picks like Soraka and Milio, and both champions have been on the verge of pushing into the S tier in previous patches, so we're giving them the bump up. Blitz is the support who's been running Celestial opposition the most, so with the upgraded buff for this patch, he should be in a really nice spot, and we're giving him a push into the OP tier, joining Maokai. Other than moving Soraka and Milio up, we're not going to jump the gun and make any drastic changes due to the support item upgrade buffs and nerfs because it's hard to say exactly how impactful they're going to be. Enchanters are definitely on the rise for this patch, while melee engaged supports are nerfed, but this has been the trajectory over the past few patches now, and despite that, melee supports have still remained on top. And remember, if you truly want to improve and rank up fast, head on over to SkillCapped.com. We just finished a massive update adding all brand new courses for Season 14. We even upload 10 new Smurf commentaries every week where a challenger teaches you how to play every champion in the exact rank you're stuck in. And remember, you can try all this out risk-free. If you don't rank up while actively using SkillCapped, you get your money back, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted this season. So that's going to wrap everything up for our 14.5 update on the solo queue tier list. Thank you all so much for watching, good luck in solo queue, and we'll see ya in the next one.